You can't be here. This is executives only." The words hit like a slammed door, sharp enough to echo through the hallway. They didn't whisper. They didn't lower their voice. They wanted the whole corridor to hear. Celeste Warren didn't move. She stood still, framed by the frosted glass of the boardroom entrance. Black silk blouse, slate gray trousers, hair pulled back not as ornament, but as armor. No badge, no entourage. Nothing that screamed power, at least not the kind they were trained to recognize. The assistant blocking the door leaned closer, his tone dripping with assumption. "Staff, wait outside. The meeting is confidential." Behind him, through the glass, laughter flickered like static. Senior executives settling into leather chairs, unaware or unwilling to imagine that the woman they'd just dismissed was the founder who had built the company brick by brick, deal by deal, battle by battle. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Celeste. Her eyes didn't narrow, her shoulders didn't tense. She simply tilted her head, a quiet gesture of disbelief that she'd seen before in banks that froze her accounts, in hotels that questioned her reservations, in classrooms where professors assumed she didn't belong. The decades hadn't erased it. They had carved it deeper. "Are you certain I'm not on the list?" she asked, her voice measured, as if she were inquiring about the weather. The assistant scoffed. "Positive. Step back before security is called." That phrase hung in the air like a gavel before security is called. Not a threat based on action, but on existence. The same refrain black professionals have heard in lobbies, at gates, in lounges. "You don't belong." Celeste's hand slipped into her pocket, not hurried, not frantic, just one deliberate movement. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen once, and sent a single message. Phase 1. Somewhere across the city, her chief of staff's phone buzzed to life. The door hissed, shut in her face. The sound was mechanical, final, like a vault sealing itself. And still, Celeste didn't flinch. In the far corner of the hallway, Malik, a junior analyst fresh out of grad school, paused mid-step. He'd seen her photo once, buried in a Forbes profile his classmates had passed around in awe, his brow furrowed. "Wait," he muttered, phone trembling in his hand. "Isn't that her?" He started recording. The assistant turned back toward Celeste, smirking as if he had done his duty. Behind the glass, a vice president adjusted his tie and gestured toward her like she was a misplaced chair. Someone laughed. And in that moment, Celeste stood not as an intruder, not as an outsider, but as silence itself. Silence that wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Because what they didn't know was that in exactly 12 minutes, the silence would end. The boardroom door shut with a hiss, sealing Celeste out as if the company itself had rejected her. The assistant adjusted his blazer, straightened his tie, and smirked like he'd just done something noble. Inside, voices carried through the glass. Fragments of jokes, the clink of coffee cups, the shuffle of leather chairs. It wasn't just a meeting, it was a ritual of power, and Celeste had been written out of the script. A tall man in a navy suit stepped into the hall, his badge flashing senior vice president. He didn't ask her name. He didn't even pretend to check credentials. He pointed at the door behind him and said, flat, "This is closed session. Step away before we escalate." Escalate, another word with edges sharp enough to cut. Celeste didn't blink. Years ago, in a midtown hotel lobby, she'd heard the same word when she dared to question why her reservation had been lost. At 24, in a bank branch, the same tone, the same warning. "If you continue, we'll escalate." Different places, same weapon, language disguised as policy. Now, at 51, in a building she had designed, they were still wielding it against her. Through the glass, a woman in a crimson blazer leaned toward the table. "Why is facilities still hovering outside? Someone clear the hall." Laughter burst like champagne corks. The assistant outside smirked wider. Celeste's phone buzzed once in her palm. A message from Talia, her chief of staff. Protocol A armed. 90 seconds until boardroom feed override. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Down the hall, Malik, the junior analyst, kept filming. His whisper barely reached the mic. "That's her. That's the founder." His colleague shook his head, eyes wide. "No way. Founders don't stand in hallways. Founders don't get blocked at doors." But Celeste stood, still, silent, anchored. The SVP crossed his arms, tapping his pen against his palm like a gavel. "Ma'am, we've had issues before with unauthorized staff trying to slip into meetings. It won't happen today. Step aside." Unauthorized staff. That phrase landed heavier than the polished marble beneath their feet. Celeste's lips parted just enough for words to slip through. "You're certain?" The SVP nodded with confidence that wasn't earned but inherited, the kind that assumes the room already belongs to him. And then escalation became spectacle. A middle-aged woman in heels walked briskly from inside, holding a stack of files like a shield. She stopped in front of Celeste, scanned her up and down, and snatched the visitor's pass hanging loosely on her blouse. Without hesitation, she tore it in half. The paper cracked like a gunshot. She dropped it into a trash can, her voice loud enough for the whole corridor to hear. Cleaners don't linger in executive spaces. Her laughter was a signal. The hallway joined in, snickers and smirks colliding. Malik's phone shook in his hand. His whisper cracked. She didn't even raise her voice. And they... Celeste turned her head slightly, her gaze meeting his lens, not to stop him but to remind him. Record if you must, but remember, silence is louder than footage. 12 minutes. That's all it would take. In the next chapter, they would learn the difference between exclusion and erasure, and they would pay for confusing the two. The shredded badge still dangled from the lip of the trash can, a small paper corpse that said more about prejudice than policy. The woman in the crimson blazer had already turned back toward the boardroom, heels clacking like a victory march. Celeste remained still, not a twitch, not a protest. She let the insult hang in the air until it became heavier than the people who spoke it. Her phone buzzed once more. "Talia, boardroom screens online, awaiting your command." Celeste lifted the phone, not to text, but to speak low, deliberate, a voice meant for more than one listener. "Talia, initiate Protocol A, full access override, patch my feed live in 90 seconds. The response was instant, crisp, confirmed, voice print verified. All channels syncing. They won't know until it's too late. Celeste lowered the phone and slid it back into her pocket. The hall still buzzed with chatter, but her silence was the loudest thing in the room. Inside, the meeting rolled on. She could hear fragments through the glass. Q4 projections, expansion strategy, risk mitigation. Their words stacked like currency, but their foundation was rotten. They thought her absence was a vacuum they could fill. Down the hall, Malik's camera caught every second. He whispered into the mic. "She's not even fighting back, she's waiting." His colleague frowned. Waiting for what? As if on cue, the boardroom lights flickered. A brief pulse. Subtle, but noticeable. Someone inside joked, "Guess the building's older than our CFO." Laughter rippled again. Celeste's eyes didn't move, but her lips curved barely. Not a smile, more like a recognition of inevitability. At 27, she had been locked out of a hotel ballroom where she was scheduled to speak. The organizer said her name wasn't on the guest list, even as her keynote slides glowed behind the curtain. She remembered waiting then, too, arms folded, silence steady until the moment came when they had no choice but to open the door. That night, she promised herself, never let them see you beg for entry. Let them see you own the room without stepping inside. And here she was again. The SVP in the hallway shifted, suddenly less sure. He looked back through the glass as if double-checking whether to continue this small power play. Celeste's eyes locked on his, calm, cold. "Eternal," he muttered to the assistant. "Security on standby?" The assistant nodded. "Already called, just in case." Those words barely left his mouth when every screen inside the boardroom blinked. Slides vanished, spreadsheets dissolved. Faces turned toward the wall of glass as their monitors filled with static, then cleared to reveal a single live image. Celeste, standing outside the door, silent, waiting, watching. A hush fell over the room. The laughter died. The crimson blazer woman froze mid-step. Celeste didn't move an inch. She let the sight of her presence do the speaking. And then, her voice filled the boardroom, not loud, not angry, but inescapable. "This is Celeste Warren, founder, chairwoman, and I've heard every word." For the first time that morning, the executives inside stopped talking. The silence was no longer hers alone. It belonged to everyone. Inside the boardroom, the air shifted. It was no longer the calm hum of business talk. It was dense, brittle, charged. Every monitor glowed with her face, Celeste Warren, standing silent in the hallway like a verdict waiting to be read. For a moment, no one moved. Then came the crack. "What is this?" one director barked, tapping his laptop as if force could erase her image. "Cut the feed," another demanded, waving at the IT manager seated near the back wall. Fingers flew across a keyboard, but nothing changed. Celeste remained, steady, unflinching. The woman in the crimson blazer broke the silence first. She laughed too loud, too forced. "This is ridiculous. She's trying to hack into our system. Call security now." Her voice carried across the hall. Celeste didn't answer. She didn't need to. The board was already exposing itself. Malik, still recording from the corner, whispered, "They think she's an intruder. They don't even realize she is the system." His colleague tugged his sleeve. "Stop filming before they see you." But Malik shook his head, eyes locked on Celeste. "Number people need to see this." Inside, the senior vice president scoffed. "She doesn't belong here. Whoever you are, end this stunt before it costs you your freedom. This is corporate property." That phrase "doesn't belong here" cut sharper than glass. Celeste had heard it too many times in too many forms, in banks, in hotels, on airplanes, and now in a boardroom with her name etched into the very cornerstone of the building. Her voice finally returned, broadcast through the screens like steel wrapped in velvet. "You speak of belonging. Tell me who decided that you own the ground you're standing on." A hush. The directors shifted, uncomfortable, but one of them doubled down. "You're bluffing. No founder stands outside her own boardroom. If you were who you claim, you'd be sitting at this table." Celeste let the words hang, then replied, low and steady. "I am not at your table because this table no longer represents the company I built." Gasps fluttered through the room. The IT manager slammed his laptop shut. "I can't override it," he muttered. "What do you mean you can't?" a director snapped. "She's embedded at the system level. This isn't an intruder. This is authorized." The crimson blazer woman spun toward him. "Authorized? She's hijacking." "Enough." Celeste's voice cut through, sharper now. "Each of you mocked, each of you laughed, and every word has been logged, time-stamped, archived." The SVP shifted again, but his arrogance cracked. He tugged at his collar, sweat pooling at his temples. "Who do you think you are?" he asked, voice trembling under the thin veil of authority. Celeste's gaze didn't waver. "The better question is, who do you think you're talking to?" For the first time, the boardroom fell into true silence. Not the silence of dismissal, but of dread. And in that silence, the weight of what was coming began to settle. From the corner of the hall, Malik's voice cracked louder than he meant. "She's not bluffing. That's Celeste Warren. She founded this company." The assistant spun, eyes wide. "What did you just say?" Malik stepped forward, phone trembling in his hand but still recording. "I said, that's the chairwoman. You're humiliating the woman who built this place." A ripple of disbelief washed through the corridor. The SVP turned to him, lips curled. "Watch yourself, Junior. You don't throw titles around like that." But inside the boardroom, unease spread like smoke. Directors leaned toward each other, whispering urgently. A few glanced at their tablets, as if searching for confirmation they already knew but didn't want to face. The crimson blazer woman barked, "Enough of this circus! Security!" Her voice bounced off the glass, brittle, desperate. And still Celeste didn't move. Her image loomed on every screen, eyes locked steady. She let Malik's words linger, let them echo against the arrogance that had filled this room for years. At 29, she had watched a mentor escort her out of a negotiation because the clients assumed she was the intern. They laughed at her silence. She remembered the heat in her chest, the burn in her throat. That night, she swore never to waste energy shouting at closed doors. Instead, she would build doors that couldn't be closed against her. Now, those same tactics of dismissal played again. But she wasn't 29 anymore. Her voice poured back through the speakers, calm but heavier now, like the floor itself had decided to listen. "You're calling security on the woman who signs your checks, on the founder whose signature is etched into your contracts. Do you realize what you've done?" Malik's camera shook as gasps escaped the room. The SVP stepped forward, desperation leaking into his tone. "You can't prove that. You show up in plain clothes, no ID, claiming to be someone you're not. This is a stunt, and it ends now." Celeste tilted her head slightly, the faintest movement, but enough to slice through his bluster. "You want proof?" She raised her phone again, tapped once. The boardroom projectors flickered. Documents scrolled across the screens, shareholder certificates, incorporation filings, acquisition records, all bearing her name, Celeste Warren. Every syllable of her authority glowed 10 feet tall. Malik whispered, "Oh my God." His colleague finally lifted his own phone, hitting record. Others in the hall followed suit. The directors shifted in their seats, faces drained of color. Some looked furious, others terrified. One whispered, "She really is." But the rest of the sentence died in his throat. Celeste's voice returned, unshaken. "You mocked me. You tore my badge. You laughed in my face. And you thought it was safe, because you believed I didn't belong. But tell me, what do you belong to, if not the truth?" The question landed like a blow. The crimson blazer woman slammed her fist on the table. "She's manipulating the system. Shut it down." The IT manager whispered, barely audible, "It can't be shut down. She is the system." Silence. Dense. Charged. Heavy. For the first time, the board realized the power they thought they had was no longer theirs. And outside the glass, Celeste stood anchored silent, steady, unstoppable. The boardroom cracked open into chaos. Voices overlapped. Sharp, panicked, desperate. "Call the police!" one director shouted, slamming his palm on the polished mahogany table. "She's impersonating an executive," another barked, jabbing a finger toward the glass wall. "This is corporate fraud." Their words spiraled louder, not because they believed them, but because volume had always been their armor. Celeste stood in the hall, motionless. Her face remained on every screen inside, calm, unreadable, anchored. The louder they grew, the quieter she seemed. The crimson blazer woman rose to her feet, pointing directly at Celeste's image. "Do you all not see? This is a con. This woman waltzes in here with no badge, no credentials, and you're letting her hijack our systems? This is a crime." The SVP, red-faced and sweating, seized the moment. He grabbed the landline phone at the center of the table and punched the keypad with shaking fingers. "Security, get up here now. Level 4. Fraudulent intruder attempting access. Possible data breach. Immediate response." The call carried across the speakers, loud enough for everyone in the hallway to hear. Malik's phone shook in his grip. His voice wavered but found its edge. "She's not a fraud. That's the founder of this company. You're lying to cover yourselves." The assistant near the door barked back, "Shut that down, kid, before you cost yourself your career." But Malik didn't lower his phone. His recording light glowed red like a warning flare. "History will cost you more than me," he said. Celeste's voice returned, low but sharp. "You just made a federal false report. I hope you're prepared to explain it under oath." The board froze for half a beat, just long enough for the words to sink in. But arrogance is stubborn. "She's bluffing," the crimson blazer woman hissed. "If she had power, she wouldn't be standing out there. She'd be in here." Celeste tilted her head slightly, eyes locked through the glass. "Power doesn't need your permission to enter. It waits until you've revealed yourselves, and you have." A gasp echoed from the far end of the hall. Guests from another meeting had stopped to watch. Phones lifted. More red recording lights blinked alive. The boardroom was no longer private. It was public theater. One director rose, fast pale, voice shaking. "She's exposing us. Turn the screens off." The IT manager didn't move. His voice cracked. "I can't. It's her system. Every keystroke we make is mirrored." Celeste spoke again, softer this time, but every syllable pressed like weight on the room. "You've mocked me. You've erased me. You've tried to expel me from a space that exists because I built it. And in 12 minutes, you'll watch that space dissolve beneath your feet." The boardroom fell silent. Not calm, not empty. Heavy, because even before security arrived, even before the police call was answered, they all felt it something irreversible had already begun. The boardroom was no longer a chamber of authority. It was a cage, and the executives inside were rattling their own bars. Celeste's image held steady across every screen. The directors fidgeted in leather chairs that suddenly felt too tight, too hot, too exposed. She raised her phone once more, her voice precise, deliberate. "Talia, begin archival playback. Feed their words back to them." A beat later, the room filled with its own ugliness. Through the speakers came the recording, the crimson blazer woman sneering, "Cleaners don't linger in executive spaces." The SVP's voice thick with disdain, "Unauthorized staff. Step aside." Ugh. The assistant's mocking tone, "She probably got lost on the wrong floor." Their laughter replayed in perfect fidelity, now stripped of context, leaving only cruelty. The directors shifted, eyes darting, throats tightening, because cruelty, when replayed, doesn't sound like confidence, it sounds like evidence. Celeste let the echoes fade before she spoke again. Every insult, every dismissal, every attempt to erase me, all recorded, all time-stamped, all sent to our shareholders as of 30 seconds ago. Gasps erupted like shattered glass. One director slammed his laptop shut. Another pulled out his phone, scrolling furiously, face draining of color. "It can't be," he muttered, but it was. Across the city, notifications were buzzing. In offices, in homes, in investor suites. The words of the board, their prejudice laid bare, were already spreading. Malik whispered into his camera, "She's not fighting them. She's dismantling them." The SVP shoved back from the table, pointing at the ceiling speaker. "You have no right." Celeste's voice cut him off, calm but lethal. "I have every right, because this board answers to me, not the other way around." The crimson blazer woman tried again, louder, as if sheer force could rewrite reality. "This is manipulation. We are the governing body of this company." Celeste's gaze sharpened. "You were." Past tense. A tremor rippled through the room. It wasn't just fear now, it was recognition. The floor beneath them, the hierarchy they'd relied on, was shifting. Celeste continued, her voice low but carrying like thunder in still air. "In less than 5 minutes, your access credentials will expire. Your emails archived, your contracts terminated, not because I am angry, but because you proved yourselves unfit to lead what I built." The IT manager swallowed hard. "She has root access. If she's telling the truth, she's bluffing," one director snapped. But his voice cracked on the last word. Celeste didn't blink. "Bluffing is when you hide weakness. I have shown nothing but patience. And now, I am showing you the consequence of mistaking it for submission." The boardroom fell still, except for the soft buzz of phones vibrating with shareholder alerts. And for the first time, the executives understood this was no bluff. This was judgment. The boardroom pulsed with silence, not calm, but brittle like glass seconds before it shatters. Every executive sat frozen, their own words still echoing from the playback. The humiliation they had cast outward was now circling back, crushing the oxygen in the room. Celeste's image leaned slightly closer to the lens. Her voice dropped, calm but commanding. "For clarity, let me remove the last veil. My name is Celeste Warren, founder, majority shareholder, chairwoman of this board, and as of this moment, the only authority you answer to." The declaration landed like a gavel. One director's face went white, another's lips parted, stammering. That can't be," but the IT manager cut him off, voice barely above a whisper. "It's true. Her name is hard-coded into every system file. Founding authorization. I checked when the feed locked in. She's the root account." The crimson blazer woman pushed back from the table, panic flashing. "Number, this is a trick. If she were who she claims, she'd be here, in this room, not standing out there like a janitor." Ugh. Her words only deepened the silence. Celeste's expression didn't flicker. She let the insult hang, then dismantled it with one line. "I don't need your chair to prove my power. I designed the floor you're sitting on." Gasps erupted, whispers rippled, and for the first time the hierarchy fractured. Some executives shifted uneasily away from the crimson blazer woman, as if her denial itself was contagious. The SVP's voice cracked like glass under pressure. "If this is real, then what do you intend to do?" Celeste's reply came like stone dropped in, still, water slow, heavy, impossible to ignore. "I intend to end what you've corrupted. This board is dissolved, effective immediately." The words detonated. "No, you can't," one director shouted. "That's illegal," another sputtered. But they all knew the truth. Legality was already on her side. Authority was already hers. From the hallway, Malik caught every second, his camera steady now. He whispered into his mic, "She just fired them. She actually fired the entire board." Inside, panic bloomed. Some executives scrambled for their phones, calling lawyers, assistants, anyone who might undo what was already locked in. Others sat slumped, defeated, their power evaporating in real time. Celeste watched, still calm, still unmoved. You spent years mistaking silence for absence. You believed power looked like you loud, entitled, careless. But power isn't in the noise. It's in the foundation. And I am that foundation. The crimson blazer woman's voice wavered, no longer sharp, no longer commanding. You can't erase us like this. Celeste's eyes locked onto hers, steady as stone. I didn't erase you. You erased yourselves. I'm simply drawing the line under the final page. The boardroom, once a fortress of exclusion, had become a stage of collapse. And Celeste Warren, no badge, no entourage, no apology, was the one holding the pen. The declaration lingered in the air like smoke after an explosion. This board is dissolved, effective immediately. The effect was instant. The SVP's face drained to ash. His pen slipped from his hand and clattered against the table, loud enough to make half the room flinch. The crimson blazer woman clutched her files to her chest as though paper could shield her from the truth unraveling around her. One director hunched over his phone, calling furiously. No one answered. The system had already locked them out. At the door, the assistant who'd first blocked Celeste's entry staggered back. His confidence crumbled as his earpiece buzzed with static. He tore it out, eyes darting toward her image on the screens. "This isn't possible," he whispered, but his voice carried. "No one has that kind of control." Celeste's gaze didn't shift. No one except the woman who built it. The guard stationed at the end of the hall hesitated, hand hovering near his radio. He had been called to eject her minutes earlier. Now he looked from the boardroom to Celeste, then to the phones raised around him. Half the hallway was filming. His jaw tightened, then his hand dropped. He didn't move forward. He didn't dara. From the gallery of screens, another notification rolled in. Shareholder update delivered. Investors everywhere were reading, listening, watching. One director slammed his fist on the table. "She can't do this. We were elected." The IT manager turned, voice trembling. "You were. Past tense. Your accounts are revoked. She just deleted you." Laughter, unexpected, unplanned, broke from the hallway. Not mocking Celeste, mocking them. The bystanders, analysts, and junior staff watching through the glass couldn't hold it in. Their phones shook as they filmed the executives unravel. And then came the first clap. A single pair of hands at the back of the hall measured, steady, then another, and another. Soon the corridor pulsed with applause. Some cheered, some shouted her name, others simply smiled, relief flooding their faces as though they'd been waiting years for this reckoning. Malik raised his phone higher, voice steady now, no longer whispering. "This is history. The founder just took her company back, and we're all witnesses." Inside, the directors' faces crumpled. The crimson blazer woman slumped into her chair, shaking her head in disbelief. The SVP muttered, she can't," but the words sounded smaller each time, like a balloon losing air. Celeste let the applause swell before she spoke again, her voice cutting through the noise with precision. "You built walls to keep me out of the room, but walls can't stand when the foundation decides they're done." Phones in the hallway buzzed with alerts. Social media feeds already carried headlines. CEO erased by her own board strikes back. "Oh, Celeste Warren dissolves executive team live." The crimson blazer woman buried her face in her hands. The SVP stood, trembling, then sat again, unable to decide whether to fight or surrender. The guard at the hall took one final look at Celeste, then stepped back entirely, his radio hanging loose. He had chosen his side. And for the first time, the fortress of arrogance they had built no longer looked unshakable. It looked like ruins. The applause in the hallway surged, filling the air like a rising tide. But inside the boardroom, it was suffocating silent, the kind of silence that falls when people realize the ground beneath them has already disappeared. Celeste lifted her phone once more, her movements deliberate, measured. "Talia," she said evenly, "execute final protocol. Immediate termination of all board-level access. Lock credentials. Suspend contracts. Notify legal." The words carried like thunder. Within seconds, the screens behind each executive flickered. Their dashboards, once filled with authority, went black. Passwords failed. Email accounts vanished. Badges at their waists buzzed red, a small, cruel flash announcing their exile. The IT manager whispered, "She wasn't bluffing." His voice trembled as he turned to the others. "You're out. All of you." Panic erupted. "What do you mean locked out?" one director barked, shaking his tablet. "I had 20 years on this board," another cried, his voice cracking. The crimson blazer woman slammed her laptop shut, as if that could stop the collapse swallowing her career. But the system was relentless. Shareholder alerts buzzed across the globe. Investors refreshed their screens to see the official notice. Board of directors dissolved by founding authority, pending restructuring. In the hallway, the applause reached a fever pitch. Phones recorded every flicker of panic, every badge flashing red, every face paling with the realization that their power was not theirs, it never had been. Celeste's voice cut through again, calm but merciless. You mocked me, erased me, laughed at me. You thought silence meant surrender, but silence was only strategy, and today it ends with you. The SVP lunged for the phone at the center of the table, shouting, "Call the police again! Call anyone!" But the line was already dead, disabled. Celeste's image sharpened on the main display, her gaze like steel. You are finished, effective now, and when you leave this building, understand your names will not follow you into history. Mine will. Gasps rippled through the hall. The guard near the entrance finally lowered his head, as if acknowledging the inevitable. The assistant who had first barred her path stumbled backward, mumbling, "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." Celeste didn't look at him. You knew enough. You knew the script. You chose to follow it. And now, you'll live with it. The crimson blazer woman tried one last protest, her voice shrill. "You can't erase us like this. You need a vote." Celeste's reply was a whisper, but it carried like a blade through the room. "Number, I need nothing, because I built this company from nothing, and I will rebuild it without you." The directors slumped back, their authority stripped bare, their futures evaporating in real time. In the hall, Malik raised his phone higher, narrating for the world now watching live. "She just erased the board, on the spot. This is the moment everything changes." The clapping turned to cheers. A chant started low, then grew louder, echoing off the marble walls. "Celeste, Celeste, Celeste." And through it all, Celeste Warren stood as she had from the beginning, calm, silent, immovable, the eye of the storm she herself had unleashed. The boardroom had become a mausoleum. The men and women who once commanded entire divisions now sat hunched, pale, stripped of titles that no longer existed. Their badges blinked red like tiny beacons of failure. The crimson blazer woman clutched her laptop against her chest, whispering frantically into a dead microphone, her words spilling into static. Beside her, the SVP's hands trembled as he tried, again and again, to unlock his disabled phone. The screen stayed dark, merciless. Outside, the hallway thundered. Applause had transformed into chants. "Celeste, Celeste!" Dozens of phones streamed live. Analysts, interns, junior staff, all of them recording the collapse of a regime that had long dismissed them. Celeste's image filled every screen. She didn't need volume to command attention. She spoke low, even, but every syllable struck like iron. Your accounts are gone. Your contracts void. But this is not just removal, it is erasure. From this moment, you hold no seat, no voice, no claim to the company you tried to twist against its own foundation. The IT manager, still seated at the corner, exhaled shakily. It's permanent. She's not just suspending them. She's blacklisting their credentials. They won't even be able to log into email as guests. One director buried his face in his hands. Another slammed a fist into the table, not out of defiance but despair. Celeste continued, "You will not walk into another meeting and use this company's name as currency. You will not present yourselves as leaders of something you tried to corrupt, and you will not collect another cent from the brand I built." Her phone buzzed once. Talia's voice came crisp through the system. Final lockout confirmed. All board members flagged. Legal notified. Compensation packages revoked. Severance withheld under breach of ethics clause. The words hit like a guillotine. The crimson blazer woman gasped. "You can't do this, years of service, contracts, protections." Celeste's reply was a whisper, sharp as glass. "You protected nothing. You destroyed trust. And now, you inherit nothing." The SVP's chair screeched as he pushed back, collapsing into himself. His voice was barely audible. She's left us with nothing." In the hallway, Malik captured every second. His voice steadied, no longer the whisper of a junior analyst, but the clarity of a witness. They thought they could erase her. Instead, she erased them. Cheers erupted behind him. The chant swelled again, rattling the glass walls, a sound of liberation. Celeste let the noise rise before she spoke one final decree. "You are banned, permanently, from this company, from its offices, from its legacy. You will not step foot in these halls again. And when you walk out today, it will be as strangers, no history, no honor, no return. The silence inside was absolute. The directors sat as if carved from stone, their empire dissolved in minutes, their titles reduced to dust by the one woman they had underestimated. Celeste didn't shout. She didn't need to. The world was already shouting for her. The glass doors slid open with a hiss. For the first time all morning, Celeste stepped inside the boardroom. No entourage, no security, no badge, only the quiet authority of someone who no longer needed permission. The directors shrank back, their power evaporated, their voices gone. Even the crimson blazer woman, once so sharp, couldn't lift her head. The SVP sat frozen, hands limp at his sides, his badge still blinking red. Celeste walked slowly to the head of the table, the chair they had once mocked her for not sitting in. She didn't sit. She placed her phone on the polished surface, let the silence stretch, and then spoke. You spent years guarding this room as if it defined your worth. You believed the table made you powerful. You believed exclusion made you strong. But today proved the truth. Power does not live in a chair. It lives in the person who built the floor beneath it. Her words pressed down like weight on stone. No one interrupted. No one dared. She leaned slightly forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper that filled every corner of the room. You tried to erase me, but I don't need to record you to prove what happened here. Because I am the result of everything you tried to erase. The directors sat in stunned silence, the sentence final, irreversible. In the hallway, Malik caught every word. His stream soared past thousands of viewers. Comments poured in, "This is history, justice in real time." She just rewrote the rules. Celeste turned, leaving the chair empty behind her. She didn't need to occupy it. The absence itself was proof of her dominance. At the threshold, she paused. Her eyes swept over the room one last time. This chapter ends here. Walk out with whatever pride you can salvage, because the company you tried to control has already moved on without you. She stepped through the doors, the glass sliding shut behind her with finality. The directors remained, silent shadows in a room that no longer belonged to them. The hallway erupted applause, cheers, chants shaking the walls. "Celeste, Celeste!" But Celeste didn't raise her hands, she didn't bask. She simply walked forward, her stride steady, her expression calm. Because justice doesn't need spectacle, it needs closure. And as the cameras captured her departure, one line etched itself into memory, her final words echoing through the feed, carried far beyond those walls. "I don't need the clip. I am the conclusion." The screens went black. The story was complete.